You are very inappropriate.
I like being inappropriate.
Broadscast is entertaining.
Come on, if I can't mess with you, this is not going to be fun.
Broadscast is thought-provoking.
That is a riveting revelation, Ms. Goldman.
Broadscast is unexpected.
Who do you like better, the person that people think you are or the actual you?
Oh, God.
Because they're nothing alike.
Broad topics, broad minds, broad hosts, but not just for broads.
We are man-friendly.
I hope to be.
I am man-friendly. I can't say the same about Kim. Wait, that sounded bad.
This is Broadscast with Kim Goldman and Jackie McDougal.
Good morning, Kim Goldman. How are you?
Good morning, Jackie McDougal.
How's it going?
It's going swimmingly.
We're live, woman. We're live.
I know. Why? I know. I am. I'm live. That's why I'm scratching my nose to make. Oh, that was gross. I just totally snorted on that.
Yeah. So, What are you wearing today?
Wow, that's kind of a personal question.
I
Why, am I
think so,
showing
too.
something? No, I'm all decked out. I was just actually sharing that I didn't wash my hair today, and I'm full of dry shampoo. So I was wondering if I was feeling flaky, but because we're on the radio, who cares?
Hello. Can you hear me, Kim?
Yeah.
The reason I ask you, first of all, before we get into this topic, because that was making my great segue.
I figured it out. I gotcha.
Yeah, we've
I'm
got
coming back
Jarrett Hill in the house once again.
Hello.
So Jarrett and I are sharing a mic for all full disclosure here because our studio is like minutes away from being done.
Yeah, I'm
Minutes.
super excited. We have
Seconds.
Yeah.
Jared's been working hard on it.
If your craft designer had been a little bit more ready, it may have been ready right now, but I don't know who that guy is, but he's terrible.
It's all right. It's all right. We're flexible.
That's because we forced him to go on the show and talk about, topics. So, all right. So we put it on our Facebook page. There's a young woman at the University of Santa Clara.
Oh, is it? I'm
Santa Clara University. It's one of.
Come on, get it right.
I know, right?
Otherwise, you have the Jesuits coming after you. Yeah.
Who wore a little outfit to work out at the gym there, and she was sent away. Kim, why don't you tell everybody what that young woman was wearing?
Oh, geez. Okay, so Grace Cristina, she's a freshman at Santa Clara University, and she posted a picture on one of God knows how many social media outlets we have. I forget which one she posted on, but a pair of shorts, black shorts, champion shorts, and then a shirt that said "POW" on it, and there's about an inch of space between the bottom part of her shirt and her shorts, and she was sent home because an inch of her stomach was showing, and apparently that's not cool with Santa Clara University and their Jesuit principals.
Right. So let's ask you this, Jarrett.
Mm-hmm.
Is this ridiculous, or do they have the right to, require any dress code that they want?
So, okay, when I first heard this story, I was like, And then you guys told me that it was a religious school. So then I thought...
We buried the lead.
Oh, right. So then I was like, that kind of changes it for me a little bit. Because I feel like when you go to a religious institution, you have to expect the rules to be a little bit more stringent or that at least going to be really clearly defined what those things are that are acceptable and are not.
Right.
And then, Kim, you mentioned... just before we went on the air, well, what about the guys in the gym with their cutoff shirts, which, I don't tend to mind.
Right.
But, then you have to think, okay, well, how much of their side are they showing? And their nipple is probably hanging out every now and then and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't mind. But, then you have to say, well, why is it okay for him to do that in the gym, but she can't show, an inch of her stomach? Where is that line, and who? It's one of those things that gets left to discretion, someone's discretion,
right.
Some dean or vice president, and however they're feeling that day.
Right.
And that's what I really hate about situations like this, because it's a double standard.
Well, it's interesting to say double standard because part of the reason that this strikes a chord in me is because my son is in 7th grade, and it's always been part of his elementary school and now his junior high that there are certain dress codes for females. The girls have to wear,
no spaghetti straps.
Oh, thank you. I was like, what's that thing called? The spaghetti strap. It has to be an inch thick. The shirt has to go 3 inches from their collarbone above their chest, I guess. The shorts have to be a specific length down their leg. You have to put your whatever it is. It's very specific. But now,
do they make their clothes out of curtain? It sounds like the Von Trapp family.
Right. Totally. But when my kid,
hello, farewell, or
my
whatever.
son, when he was in elementary, kids got sent home because they didn't, it didn't match the clothing policy at that school. Now that he's in junior high, now the girls are told they can't wear leggings to school because it's too much of a distraction to the boys.
Wait, but let me ask you this.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they say because it's too much of a distraction to the boys, or do you interpret?
I don't remember what the specific language is, but that's what it is.
I find leggings too distracting to me. Like I recently saw, and I don't mean in a sexual way. I saw a woman recently wearing a pair of leggings, and like nothing was left to the imagination that in a place of education, no, thank you. I mean, it just never mind the fact that it's a case of fashion, it just looks bad.
Well, but I think for me, the problem that I have is not that it's not that it's not a distraction or it is a distraction, but it puts entirely the onus on the female as to what she wears and what she doesn't wear, which I think is a problem in our society, that it's 100% the woman's responsibility, that the men are off the hook, that if a girl walks in and she's wearing something that's, a little distracting, that it gives permission to the boys to oogle, to stare, to do whatever. And I just wish there was two conversations happening, not just you can't, and therefore, it's all on you. Mm-hmm. I mean, the truth is, I see lots of girls that come into school. I work on school campuses that are very boobalicious. And, I also see boys wearing their saggy jeans. Like, maybe that's distracting. I just feel like we don't have the conversation, an appropriate conversation.
Well, I think you're kind of touching on this, that I often hear us talk about how, women shouldn't do this so that they don't get, assaulted and mm-hmm. stuff like that. And it's like, why don't we have that same conversation about teaching boys not to rape women?
Right.
How about that? You know what I mean? And it's the same kind of thing. Like, no, men have to be taught how to deal with women. It's not, she had that tube top on and I couldn't resist.
Right.
That's not acceptable.
Right. And that's what I think I struggle with this conversation.
But I think there's a lot of gray area between what's not appropriate for school. And we've talked about this in the past, but what's not appropriate for certain situations, church, school, other places where you're supposed to like kind of buckle down and focus, and sexual assault. Like mm-hmm. I absolutely agree that I've said it in the past that I could walk down, a woman could walk down the street, have no clothes on, and she still does not deserve to be sexually assaulted. Like, it doesn't matter what she's wearing, who she is, like how drunk she is. Like, there's no right to harm a woman. This is not about that. This is about the fact that, there are more options, I think, for young women to dress inappropriately than there are for boys. So yes, there is a double standard. There's always a double standard. Right. However, I don't see guys in like leggings or.
Yeah, but what about guys that wear skinny jeans? What about guys that
just look douchey?
But I had this argument with some friends of mine over the weekend, and my guy friend was like, guys have raging hormones. I'm thinking, so do women. Like guys can't help what they see. No matter what a girl wears, they're going to be distracted by it. I'm like, but my point is, where is the conversation that educates men and young boys as to how they participate in this? I'm not saying it's not okay. It's not wrong to tell the girls to be more modest in what you wear and to be aware of your surroundings. Like, I get all of that, but I just feel like the conversation stops just one pant leg short of being able to include how a male and a boy should participate in that conversation also.
So something that you touched on, Jackie, always makes me a little bit uncomfortable when we use words like appropriate and should and things like that, because that always gets left to discretion again, right? And so I get really anxious when we have laws and rules and and guidelines like in these kinds of instances that are more about discretion than it is about, okay, it needs to be 3 inches under your collarbone, as opposed to something that would say too much or not good or inappropriate, because those things are much harder to gauge. And so if you're the principal that day, you could say it's one thing and Jackie could come in the next day and say it's another, and then I would say something different. And so discretion in those situations always makes me feel like there's got to be a way that we can do this better. When I was in school, I remember the policy for girls and their skirts was it had to be below their fingertips if they were holding their hands down. And so I feel like that's an easy thing to grade. But if it's, it can't be too short, or it can't be,
too tight,
too high on the thigh. Like
Right.
those kinds of things I feel like make it really different. And then when we talk about how people are going to respond to it, I think we have to teach people to let people be who they are. If she I mean, no one likes to see someone that probably shouldn't be wearing leggings, but it's like, but she has the right to do that.
And if she
make
feels
that bad choice for herself.
But I also, I mean, again, this is this conversation that
Just let me cut in for 1 second. If you
Yeah.
guys have an opinion on this, please, like, you can comment on the Spreaker app and also on Facebook. So I put the picture up on Facebook so you guys can all see, and you can comment, and maybe we'll read your comment in the air.
yeah, and then you can come on and argue with us. Because,
Exactly.
I mean, I think that this conversation is going to stay with us forever, because I think people, as Jarrett said, it's all about like discretion and what you think is appropriate. And then it goes back to your own personal ethics and morals. But I think we just tend to not have big conversations that include taking personal responsibility, having self-respect, having some modesty. I mean, I winter formal was the last couple of weeks. And so everyone's posting pictures of their kids going to winter formal. And as a grown woman, I'm looking at these girls going, holy, get out of town. What are you wearing? I can see your butt cheeks hanging out, with the high heels. And these are 15-year-old kids. And I have my niece, she posted hers, and she looked incredibly classy and stunning with long sleeves and a beautiful dress. And I commented on how classy she looked. And her mother, faithful listener of our show, Kika, she said to me how hard it was for her to find a dress that had some level of modesty attached to it, because everything is all about the shortest, the most revealing. And these are in high school, and these are in the teen departments. Like, how do you empower and educate girls to to be modest and to have some self-respect when all you offer them are these revealing, tight, low-cut?
And I think that's a bigger topic. Absolutely, because there was a post a couple of years ago about shorts and shorts for girls, and I noticed this with shorts, as when I said back in Boston.
Oh, like Target was
well, like you go out there, and I could buy cargo shorts. My kids wear uniforms, so I got to go out and buy khaki or black or blue or whatever, and it's so easy to get for the boys. But when I try to get those for the girls or for my daughter, they're like super short, or they say some word across the butt, or
right. Juicy, rocks your butt.
Yeah, like we don't need words across our butts,
Right. Well, at such a young age, when
right,
it already starts that
Right.
that sexualization that just starts at such a young age, and I guess that's where I'm
yeah,
at.
and I absolutely agree with that. So it's really, as parents, not. The only way to change this is to not be buying this stuff. Like, clearly they're putting it out there because people are buying it.
But, or like Jarrett says, have the conversation that, if this is what you're comfortable in, I want there to be some kind of balance between being confident in showing your boobaliciousness. There are some people that knock yourself out. I was not raised that way. I was raised to cover up like a burqa. Always. That's kind of how I was raised, because I was raised with two men, and my dad was like, all men think with their penises, and you have to go through life thinking that way. So you got to be modest. But as I get old, and I'm still that way kind of as an adult woman, but I just feel like, we don't instill in either sex, male or female, that there is a level of modesty that is also attractive and sexy and can be built into your confidence. You don't have to put everything out into the world. I work on high school campuses, and my gosh, they barely, basically some of these girls are showing up in pasties and,
Pasties?
No, they're see-through shirts that are pulled really tight. But then the boys look like thugs,
Yeah.
my God, I hope my kid's a sports kid. He walks out of the house with sports everything.
Well, that's what he looks like when he leaves the house. Who knows what he
Yeah.
looks like when he gets to school? Though.
Yeah, not yet. He's not. He's too honest right now. Maybe later.
I don't know. It's a challenging thing to me, because I feel like when I am not a parent, just full disclosure, but I've been here all week working on the studio, and so I'm around kids, every day now for this week, which is an interesting part of my job, is like being immersed in someone's home for like a week while I'm doing an installation for them. And so Jackie's kids have been here, and I remember you talking about going to buy clothes for Lucy and feeling like the shirts aren't shaped the same for girls as they are for boys, but it's like, she's 7, 8 years old. Like, why can't they just have a shirt?
Right.
And then I'm thinking about like how young kids are developing, like more than they used to when I was a kid, when you were a kid. And so I feel like it's a really, really hard thing to figure out. And I'm glad that I don't have this challenge of like what to do with kids, because I always because I don't know what the right answer is all the time. And I always say, like, I don't want to press everything onto my kids when I have them that I believe I want them to grow up and have their own thoughts. But I also want to like train them to have, good morals and good ideas and to treat people fairly. And so I don't know where those lines are. I feel like it's really difficult.
I don't think it's as complicated as we make it sound. So there are certain clothes that are appropriate for your age. My daughter's 9, and there are certain clothes that are not appropriate for your age. And
sorry, Lucy, I said you were 7 or 8. I'm sorry.
But I actually will use billboards, or other things as topic points, with my kids, and like my middle one especially, like, oh, look at that lady, that's gross, on a billboard or whatever. And I'll talk to all of them about, like, listen, this brand feels that this is what they should do to get your attention and to get you to buy. Maybe it works for some people, but the best way to let them know that you're not one of those is not buy that brand. Is that also, there was one thing I was like, a woman, it was, I think, one of those like LA strip joints or something. I said, sometimes women look to do jobs because they don't feel great about themselves. I mean, we just have like different conversations. Some people strip because it's great money, but
some people feel empowered by stripping.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But we just try to have conversations that, how you present yourself, how you dress and how you do your hair and how you do your makeup and all of it. It's how you present yourself. And I think that's the bigger topic.
People. And I think it's not just, and it goes back to the beginning of the segment, that it's not just about how you put yourself into the world. It's also how others perceive you. So my conversation with my kid is, don't stare, don't oogle. Like when he started 7th grade, I mean, I was like, dude, do you notice boobs? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So girls develop in a way that is more obvious than how boys develop. So you need to keep your head down. You need to, inside your head, you can acknowledge that someone is handsome or pretty. And you can notice that one girl may have bigger boobs than the next one, but you keep that stuff to yourself. Like when they had a 6th grade pool party, and all the girls showed up in their bikinis. It was the first time that the kids ever and the boys had their shirts off with that's a lot of testosterone and hormones running around that pool. And
just general newness for kids, right?
Totally. And that's what I'm saying. They didn't change in PE. They didn't have any of that. And I said to my son, like, you just keep your head down, buddy. Girls are uncomfortable because things are starting to pop, and it's very visible when girls go through puberty, versus a boy. And, those are the conversations I was having, that you respect, you keep, had eyes to eyes, like. And he's a boy, and he very much notices, but I want him to be respectful. And the same thing when he walked into the PE room, when he changed for gym with the boys, he was really nervous, and who's going to be looking at him, and boys have those same insecurities. And so I'm like, dude, just stay focused on what you're doing. You just look people in the eye, and everyone's feeling the same anxiety that you are, but you treat people with respect and with kindness, and it's not about their body parts. But
but at the same time, it's like, I like that you're allowing him to have his feelings, but you just have to learn how to act appropriately, because it's not really about how you feel. It's about how you respond. But, I used to be bummed that my daughter always wanted to dress, in boy clothes, and now I'm just thrilled because as she gets older, and so all right. So let's move on to another topic here. So
cut to Lucy becoming like Miss Teen USA, and she's like always in gowns and stuff. You're gonna eat those words.
Oh my God! Can you imagine me as a pageant mom? I'd be like the Tanya Harding of stage moms.
Oh no!
Breaking legs.
Right.
And if you're under 25, you have no idea what that reference is.
Oh no!
So anyway, so let's move on. So the FBI and Apple are in a fight.
Yeah.
And it's not because they can't make a call on their iPhone.
Well, okay. So do you want me to give the context?
Yeah.
On this
Yes,
story?
please.
So everyone remembers the shooting in San Bernardino, the terrorist attack, or the terrorist shooting that we had there. And so for the longest time, the FBI has been trying to get into the phones of the suspects. And there's been a whole back and forth about their phones and whether or not Apple should help them get into the phones. But Apple's been, in the last, I would say, year or two, I guess, really adamant about, like, we are locking people's things down. We can't even get access to them, which I never really believed. But because I've given up the whole idea of having privacy with anything. So now there's been a case that is ordering Apple to open up those phones or help them, get that information. And it'll probably be in the courts a little bit longer with appeals. I'm really, really challenged by this because I don't think Apple should do it. But it's hard to say that without sounding like you're with the terrorists. You know what I mean? But like, I think if Apple is saying like, this is our policy and we are going to treat your information with respect and give you at least this illusion of privacy, I think they should be made to stick to that. And the police should have to figure out how to get into the phone. I mean, if Huck on Scandal can get into the White House in 30 seconds, he's always like, this is going to take 3 days. Boom, we're in. It's like, wait, what?
I know.
There's got to be a way that they can get in there. Our intelligence, if we can have intelligence, telling us where Osama bin Laden is in a house from space, we should be able to get into a cell phone sitting on the table.
So is it the same thing? Because I thought that the argument was that I don't have an iPhone, which my son points out to me all the time.
We're not judging.
Yeah, my son does. It's cool. Yeah,
totally judging.
So the thing is that I think on an iPhone, if you try to get your passcode more than 10 times, everything gets erased. Right?
That's an option.
Okay, so that's apparently
everything gets erased. Really?
Yeah.
You can set it to where if you put the passcode in 10 times, you can have it wipe your phone. I've chosen not for that because God only knows.
Right. So that's apparently what the problem is that if the FBI tries the passcode more than 10 times, they're afraid that all the data from the phone is going to be released. So they've asked Apple to write an override basically for this one particular situation. And Apple's argument is like, oh, well, if we do it for you, then we have to do it for everybody. I'm like, no, you're doing it for this one particular situation of someone that who had, and I don't personally, for me, don't think it's a slippery slope. It's very unique. This is a terrorist attack. These are people that plotted to kill people. Like, I sort of feel like sometimes we have to make accommodations and make exceptions.
But see, this goes back to what we were talking about with discretion. So like in this instance, it's this case, but then God forbid, a child goes missing somewhere, but we have their phone. Well, if we can get into their phone, then we can know where they are. Okay, well, we'll allow it for this one. And then it's, another case and another case. Right. And then it's like, okay, well, whose discretion are we going to be at? That's the whole thing again.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just sort of feel like when it's a national security issue.
Yeah, I get that. Totally.
That I feel like maybe this is the time that we do something. I mean, and again, it's not Apple's whole their argument is that, it's a slippery slope and that we want to make sure that we honor everybody's privacy. And I'm like, we're only just not honoring the one guy that shot up a room full of people and he's now dead. Like,
yeah, but that's one person now, I mean, so is it, if somebody murders, and it's called a terrorist attack, are those lives more valued? So, or if somebody else came in and was like the guy next door and shot, and like now Apple has to open that phone, what makes lives worth different amounts, or what makes a crime a bigger crime that's worthy of this kind of.
Trust me, you're talking to someone that's directly impacted by crime and all that stuff and value of life. And it's not about valuing, but I do think that when there are terrorists involved, that it may bump it up the list a little bit more when you have people that are connected to terrorist cells and that there's the threat that there is a connection to terrorist groups when we are still, quote unquote, at war. Like, I don't know. I guess I sort of feel like I'm going to throw them a bone on this one. I don't know. But
I love that you say quote unquote at war, because I feel the same way, like war adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, yeah. I mean, I haven't made up my mind on this, so I'm just kind of throwing out ideas. But maybe when it's a situation of national security, maybe that is the line that we draw, right? Maybe when Homeland Security is involved and, all these other intelligence agencies, and they feel like there's a real danger to, the country. Maybe that is the line that we draw, or maybe it is, another line with crime, and I don't know, but I feel like I'm not comfortable with you guys have to help them open up the phone, because it's like, no, we have a hardline policy against not doing that. And so then my trust in Apple is like, okay, well, at what point are you going to be opening up my phone? I mean, hopefully, God forbid anything ever happened with me as far as a crime is concerned, but like, I want to feel like I have at least some semblance of like
Right.
you guys are going to keep your word.
You mentioned crime, and I mean, obviously, one of the reasons that you were thrust into, or the reason that you were thrust into the spotlight. This is my segue. Was because of the crime against your brother, the murder of your brother. What do you think? Like, if his phone, the killer's phone, was tapped into like all those years ago, I mean, that actually could have solved things.
Well, they did. They had access to all of his records. It was all testified to. I mean, we didn't. Did we have cell phones?
But it wasn't. It was
but it was
all
of his records were subpoenaed, and we saw all of his trace of phone calls and who he was calling all day. Absolutely, we had that.
Right.
That was part of the evidence.
But there's just no there was obviously no texting and no all of that, and it just would have, made a huge difference.
I don't think that. And I know you want to go into that other topic, but
yes, I do.
I don't think that there is a hard and fast rule. I appreciate that Apple is sticking by its commitment to privacy. I totally get that, and I applaud that. That little itty bitty part of me goes, rules are meant to be broken sometimes. Like, and I know that is counterintuitive to, us wanting people to protect us and Apple as a company made a pledge. I totally get that. And like I said, I applaud that. I just also wonder sometimes when, and it actually goes to something similar, that when you break confidence, when someone tells you if they're going to commit a crime, there isn't a responsibility, from a therapist to have to say, oh, this person is threatening. I mean, they claim that, but I'm breaking confidentiality. If my client is threatening to shoot up a bunch of people, I'm bound by, confidentiality laws or attorney-client privilege. Like, to me, some of those things I think are really,
they're really hairy situations to try and figure out for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an easy answer here, and I'm glad I'm not the person that has to make the decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, at least as it is right now, and as I've understood it to be going down. I'm uncomfortable with Apple being forced to open it up. But I mean, if my mom was involved in the shooting or something was killed, I'd probably feel differently about it. So I don't know.
I honestly can't believe that the FBI.
Well, that's how I was going to.
I mean, I honestly, what?
Let's end this with the FBI really needs to up their game. I mean, that's
come on.
Really so.
Or Apple's stock is going through the roof right now because people are like, heck yeah, I can do whatever the heck I want. No one's ever going to know.
There's that.
So, Kim, I've been seeing you on TV lately,
Oh.
doing interviews and such.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, for the one reason is the fabulous book Media Circus, which you can buy on Amazon.
Is there anything else going on? I don't know what else.
But
we talk about.
And I think Jarrett has some thoughts on this. But the new show American Crime Story, American Crime.
Now, American Crime is actually
American
a really good
Crime
show.
Is a different,
That's a great show. Yeah, American Crime Story, not so much.
Focused on the murder of your brother.
No, it is actually not focused on the murder of
the
my
case
brother.
Due to the murder of your brother Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown, OJ Simpson's wife. Ex-wife. So you've been asked. So I want to give you the floor for a second because, what? I mean, you've watched it, yes.
Okay, so
Some
here's
of it?
so here let's go back. So for those new people to the show, my brother was Ron Goldman, who was killed by who we believe OJ Simpson, who is now sitting in a jail in Las Vegas for other crimes. There is a new series on FX, The People VS OJ Simpson.
Say that again.
What do you want me to say again?
Wait, I'm sorry. Oh wait,
Stop.
that's the wrong one.
Yeah.
That's my reaction to the jail. It's a pause.
Anyway, there's a new series. It was started a couple weeks ago on FX, People vs. OJ Simpson. We are 3 episodes in. I've been very vocal about it for a couple of reasons. I'm frustrated that we were never contacted about the show. I have consistently asked every week to get any kind of screener to get a heads up. We are told no. We were ignored and then told no. I'm a little frustrated by that. I think it's a little disrespectful. However, their argument is that the show is not about Ron and Nicole, and it's about all the behind the scenes that went on between the attorneys and the trial of the century. And I'm grossed out by it because I don't feel like I have a choice not to watch, although I realize I cannot watch. But when your story is being perpetuated on television week after week, and people are commenting and writing about it and having thoughts about it, I feel like I have to kind of participate so that I can be educated and not blindsided by things. But it's really frustrating, and everybody wants to ask if I'm learning anything new. The answer is no. There's nothing new that I'm learning. I am more perplexed about what is being omitted from the show and what people aren't learning if they didn't know what was going on all those 21 years ago. But I don't know. I'm frustrated by it, to be honest with you.
If I can ask you an interview question,
Yeah,
what do you feel like has been missing so far? I mean, I know we're only 3 episodes in, but what do you feel like, why didn't they put this in, or why was this not covered?
I wish that they would have shown the brutality with which my brother and Nicole died. I don't love recreations at all, but they did recreate the crime scene just after the fact. So the opening scene was my brother and Nicole dead. They basically took their crime scene pictures and just recreated that for the opening scene. I wish that that there would have been a little bit more of the violence, so that by the end of the series you can understand how vicious the attacks were, so that at the end, whenever you have a feeling about it, you understand where we started.
See, if I were producing it, I would have actually thought the family would have wanted the opposite. I thought that the family would have maybe thought, did you have to show that? Like, because, I mean, obviously we don't know exactly how it all went down, but like,
we do have to pay attention to the evidence.
Well, no, I'm saying like second by second, you know.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Nobody asked. Nobody asked.
True.
A lot of crime victims, in which you can read about in my book, is that we're okay.
What is the name of the book?
It's called Media Circus. If you talk to people that are connected to any kind of violent crime, we're okay talking about the wounds and the attack, because we're so desensitized, I think, as a country, that, oh, he died, that we don't even really, oh, he died, oh, he was killed. We don't really attach much more to that because it happens so often. I want people to know how vicious it was, and how Nicole was nearly decapitated. My brother had more than 30 stab wounds, 5 of which were fatal, so that you absolutely can appreciate the gross injustice of someone not being held criminally responsible for those crimes. Because, and not to say that if it was just one stab wound, it's less of, vicious than 5, but I think that we're so cavalier when we talk about people dying that we forget that there is human life, that there was a struggle, that there was the violence, that I don't know. I mean, my brother put up a fight that night. My brother, did his best to try to save somebody else. That's missing from the show. The domestic violence is missing from the show, although they did kind of allude a little bit to the 911 tapes the other night, but I don't know how much that's going to be a part of it. I think that's missing.
I have to be honest, that's really surprising for me to hear that you would want to see that depicted. I would have never expected you to say that, so I'm definitely shocked to hear that.
But that, I feel like, there are moments when I feel like I don't want people to see the pictures without me being there, because I feel like that's an invasion. But I also then feel like it's okay for me. Like there is violence,
which as I hear you saying it makes sense, like, because in some, and I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in some strange way, it you may feel like it honors what they went through or something, to be able to see it depicted.
And that's what I'm saying, how valiant of an effort they both put up to try to save themselves in their final minutes. But then how brutal and savage it was, so that when, like I said, you get to the end and there was nobody held criminally responsible, it's far more of an injustice, because, wow, those people were slaughtered in their last seconds of their life and nobody paid for that. Like, that's heavy, And I think that throughout the entire trial, the fact that how Ron and Nicole died and what happened to them was so lost, because we got so caught up in all of the other
the media circus, that it was so, like, nobody, I mean, people are upset that they died, but, like, I think people forget, like, that was really,
it's like the crime actually is a sidebar. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's the circus is the actual, what people are tuning in for.
Right. Well, and I was reading an article yesterday that at the end of the article it said, all right, everyone get your popcorn ready to go. And I was like, oh, come on. This is not entertainment.
That's the stuff that, like, it makes me feel sad when I read those things, because I know you, and I know, I can feel your loss when we talk about your brother, and it's
Yeah.
just like the fact that people are popping popcorn to.
And they're live tweeting, and they're like,
Yeah.
I just, it's so bizarre to me.
Although the marketing side of me is like, Kim, you should be live tweeting.
Yeah.
You should be letting people know about your book. And then people judge because they're like, oh, you're trying to make money off of blah, 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 blah.
I'm trying to get famous. I'm trying to make money. I'm like, oh.
And you're like, I have to go back. I have to go back to, when you did Oprah, back in 2009? And was it 2009? 2008. And she, made a point to say that, like, America has moved on. Why haven't you found closure? And you were so offended by that. And I told you, I want to find that photo and, like, that quote and just make a GIF out of it. And because America hasn't moved on.
Right.
And we've been seeing references to this case, that has affected your life so deeply for all of these years.
And I understand that people haven't moved on. There was an injustice for some people. There was a huge injustice that happened back in 1995 with that verdict. And I appreciate that people are still so committed and connected and feel so attached to the story for whatever reason they do, guilt or not guilty. But I don't think that using a dramatized version of the story to help bridge the gap, to help have a conversation is the best way to do that.
Right.
Because half of what you're watching is BS.
Yes.
And for most people that weren't there and that weren't privy to the attorney-client privilege conversations that they're now breaching, you don't know what's true and what's not. And I don't really care what happened behind closed doors and how, like, the Kardashian, like, oh my God, the Kardashian.
This is supposed to be a Kardashian-free zone, and they're making it very difficult for that to be.
Well, since you brought up the Kardashians,
no, but I mean, they're all over this series, and they weren't all over this, according to the stories you've told me before.
Right, but I don't know
what was going on in their background.
And who cares? What does that? What is the probative value of some of the BS that they're creating behind the scenes? I mean, I don't know what the purpose is unless it's for entertainment value.
Right. But what's fascinating too, though, is that you were right there in the middle of all of it, and so a lot of these players, a lot of these, from the attorneys on both sides. So just from a strictly, casting and writing standpoint, like, are these characters anything, like, to give us some scoop on some of these characters? Like, is Ross, David Schwimmer,
Nice.
We were on a break.
Yeah.
Anything like Robert Kardashian?
I think what she's really wanting to ask is, like, what are they getting right? Like,
Right.
what's been good?
No,
so
I
far?
really want to know what they're getting wrong.
Okay, so let me just preface it by saying this. So there are 5 people, right? My brother Nicole, Phil Van Adder, who is the lead detective, Johnny Cochran, and Bob Kardashian are dead. So we can't go to them for any truth in what happened.
Oh,
in
I
this.
didn't think about that. That's so true.
So then you have Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, who is disbarred, and then you have who's left, Alan Dershowitz, and a couple other attorneys. That all of their conversations are bound by attorney-client privilege. So, and then you have the killer who's in jail. So the dialogue we're hearing about, no idea how much of it is BS, how much of it is fabricated. If there's one line and then they created a whole conversation around it, I have no idea, and nor do I frankly care. The actors themselves, I said this in an interview the other day, like, I'm not a critic and I don't want to be having conversations about riveting performances and Emmy nods and Golden Globe conversations, which is what everybody's talking about. It grosses me out. I don't think that it's true to who I remember them to be, but I'm also kind of biased because I remember all the defense team to be a-holes, and right now that's not necessarily maybe what you're seeing. They're a little softer than how I remember them. They're a little gayer than how I remember them.
Wait, who specifically?
F. Lee Bailey's character and Robert Shapiro's character. I don't remember them as effeminate as how I believe they're being portrayed. Chris Darden is being a little, I think they're portraying him a little soft than how I remember him. Bill Hodgman, who was one of the district attorneys, who they're kind of playing him down a little bit mousier than I remember Bill. They've also pitted Marcia Clark and Bill Hodgman against each other in the first 2 episodes, which is not at all what happened. I don't know. I mean, I just, the killer himself, they don't have him being, as charming and gregarious as he was and how people remember him.
Do you think they're producing it in a way that is kind of sympathetic to the defense
So
and to
far,
the killer?
well, I feel like so far he's coming off a little sympathetic.
You mean we're being led to feel sympathetic about him? Okay.
Yeah. That has been my impression. Like, and I'm frustrated at that. I've said this from the beginning that I've learned about the series. If they're going to insinuate and show how manipulative and disgusting the defense team was in changing, in accusing an entire LAPD and an entire district attorney's office as being bungling idiots, conspirators, and racists, then,
So, okay.
To get their client off,
Right.
I mean, I hope that people walk away and see that, but.
And, okay, this is so challenging for me.
Let's just say it.
Well, no, because, I mean, you're so connected to it, and, like, I viewed it as a fifth grader, like, watching it on TV.
Right.
We get it. You're young.
I specifically remember being on recess when the verdict came out, and, like, I stayed in class because I wanted to listen on the radio.
Right.
And, like, everyone has formed their opinions about what happened and what didn't. And so listening to your perspective is interesting to me because, I mean, is there a part of you that can understand how your perspective comes from the fact that your brother was murdered, and versus, like, someone on the other side who felt like the defense, and I'm not wholly in this side, but the stark opposite, I guess, would be someone that feels like the defense did their job to be able to show, like, the injustice that comes from the LAPD in that instance, or from the district attorney, or whatever that perspective would be. Because I know for myself, as a black male, looking at the way that police deal with, black people, I'm definitely, always giving them a side eye or giving them a pause. And, like, and one of the things I hear often is, like, when white Americans look at the police, they feel a sense of security and safety. Mm-hmm. Me as a black person, and specifically a black man, when I see the police, I get nervous.
Right. And so I appreciate you asking. So there's two things. Yes, absolutely. I have a skewed impression because I'm emotionally connected to this case. And I've always said that in every other case, I can separate my emotions and my logic and apply 100% logic to a situation. Here, mm-hmm. I opt out of that because it's almost impossible. That being said, the defense team in this case, on the one hand, accuse an entire police department and the district attorney's office as being racist conspirators. At the same time, accusing them of being bungling idiots, that they were too stupid to be able to collect the evidence in a proper way. So are they too stupid as a department, or are they that smart that they were able to conspire against an innocent person? Now, the one thing that also does gets missed in the show is that in the opening scene, when they have Furman on the scene, who everyone believes is a racist, seeing the evidence, they neglected to show that there were 30 other officers on the scene at the time who already surveyed all of the evidence mm-hmm. before Furman got there, right? They don't show you that. And so they make this say, oh, Furman's all by himself. And there's like these innuendo that he somehow collected evidence and then figured out how he was going to convince his entire teammate, his entire department heads and all the police officers around, hey, let's go frame this guy. Like, I don't know where he is. I don't know if he has an alibi. I don't even know if he's dead or alive, but let's frame him and let's plant some evidence on his property before we even know where he is.
See,
that's the thing that I think people totally miss. And the other thing, and let me just go back to say, the LAPD gave the killer a free pass at every opportunity that they came across his plate. He was called out, the police department were called out to his house, I think 3 or 4 times for domestic violence, and they didn't do anything. They didn't handcuff him, they didn't bring him in on charges, they let him run free for the entire day of the Bronco chase, right? Oh yeah, sure, turn yourself in. The day of the Bronco chase, they let him, at that point, they shut the freaking freeway down for him, right? Like, they didn't shoot him, they didn't go after him. The amount of courtesy that was afforded to him, the white cops and the black man, the amount of courtesy that was afforded to him, I think people forget that. And what's happening present day didn't happen in our case. And I think those connections is really irresponsible.
So, a couple of things. So, I actually felt like the depiction in episode 1 of OJ definitely made him look guilty, and it was just such a small thing that I saw the police arrive at the house and they see the Bronco sitting outside, and there's a little bit of blood on the door. And so, like, that's one of those things that's been disputed, whether or not that was planted or you know, that was something that was actually there. So I was interested to see those things depicted on the night as opposed to brought up in court as evidence, if that makes sense at all. So I thought that was interesting. Number two, I think...
And the blood in the car.
And right, for sure. So that was interesting to me. But then also, you touched on how the defense, you know, accused the police department of being conspirators and all that kind of stuff. And I stupidly had forgotten about the climate in LA at that time around the police and policing and, you know, Rodney King and all those kinds of things. And so I feel like for me, it's easy to arrive at the way that the police are, you know, for lack of better terminology, in cahoots to be able to protect themselves in those kinds of instances, especially even now with the context of where we are right now in America with, you know, grand juries, you know, letting police officers off all the time in these different cases, and however people feel about that. So I feel like it's easy to arrive at, or at least to make the case that the police are, you know, the police are working together to protect themselves. I don't think that's a hard thing to arrive at least for myself and for a lot of people. So I get your perspective, which says like, well, which one is it? Are they smart or are they stupid?
I just think
and then I think other people would say, could both of those things exist?
I just honestly, I think that I don't want to say regardless is to diminish it, but I think to accuse or assume that literally at least at the bare minimum 30 officers that were there at the scene that night, plus all the people that came after, all decided to conspire together. They were all willing to risk their careers, their pensions, their reputations, their families, an entire department with cameras everywhere. We're all going to do this under the very watchful eye of the media for him. And why? And again, they didn't know where he was at the time. They had no idea where he was. And so, but people are like, oh, you know, they knew of him, right? Because when they got to the house, they knew it was that it was who he was. He was a celebrity. But I still can't, I can't make the connection, regardless of the black-white issue. I cannot make the connection that an entire police department would conspire to frame an innocent person. And I don't think that the defense team even believed that, because they talk about all of the evidence that was stacked against their client. And so the only way to get rid of the evidence is to make crap out of the people that present it. And you go to an all-black jury, with the exception of one, and chip away at the racial tension that was happening in our country and in LA at that time. And they were very smart and strategic. It worked. It absolutely worked. So the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of evidence that pointed to him, they only saw it through racist conspirator eyes. And they were very successful. I just find it despicable that they were willing to manipulate that jury and not give them the benefit of the doubt that they could actually see the evidence for what it was and make a decision based on fact, not based on color.
When you say they only saw it through racist conspirator eyes, who are they?
The jurors. Because the defense team painted every single piece of evidence came from the hands of a racist cop or conspirators that planted evidence on him, or bungling idiots that couldn't collect it properly.
Because I won't say who said this, but I was talking to a family member who said, like, oh, OJ definitely killed those people, but the police did such a bad job of handling the case and handling the evidence that's why I think he got away. And so I get why you could feel like the jury only saw it through racist conspirator eyes. I understand why you would feel that way. I don't feel that way personally. I feel like, as I'm thinking about this, it's hard to remove the lack of trust in the police department in that time, and even right now, again, from the case for me, because I feel like there's so many questions about things that police are doing. And I mean, if we use present day context, how many times have we had a police officer say, oh, the suspect was lunging at me and I feared for my life, so I shot him. And then the video comes out and Walter Scott is running away from the police officer being shot in the back. Or, you know, there's countless examples and we don't have all day for that. But like, there's plenty of instances in which the police have said something to us and then we find out for it not to be true with like hard and fast evidence, oftentimes now video.
Right.
So for me, again, understanding why you feel the way that you feel, I know for myself, I look at it and I'm like, it's so easy to not trust the police in these instances because of all the things that we've seen.
And I guess I just feel like we're always going to be having this conversation if
Sure.
people are never going to afford any truth to what they say either. And so we're at an impasse, right? So here we are putting the show out without any context where the producers are talking about it being a PSA for the Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is really irresponsible.
I disagree with that too.
But that's the context for which the show started. And so when you watch people on social media, they're like, oh, there they are, a black guy getting chased by police again. I'm like, what? He was being told he had to turn himself in. He ran from the police. Like, I'm still struggle with how irresponsible we are when we have these conversations. It is not, I feel like we paint one brush, when we talk about when we talk about police department and African Americans. I think there's only one way that people look at it, that it's always the police against the person. And I struggle with that because yes, there are times that happens, and then there are plenty of times that it doesn't. And I think this case wasn't that.
I think it's really, really important to say in this discussion, like, I hate to be the voice for black people because I'm definitely not, but I know a lot of other black people as well do not hate police officers, and I don't think that all police officers are bad. I wouldn't even say most police officers are bad. I think, and it's kind of like the conversations we have around education, mm-hmm. like, one bad teacher, spoils the bunch. And it's like, no, there are a lot of fantastic teachers. And I think there are a lot of fantastic police officers. And we see those depictions on social media with them playing football with the kids or whatever.
Right.
I think that we do know that there's like an institutional tone of policing sometimes, or oftentimes, that really lends itself to black people being arrested in alarming rates and being, over-policed and over-imprisoned and all those kinds of things. So it's hard to remove that from the discussion around how black people feel about the police and people feel about the police and the relationship to black people.
But when are we supposed to just not assume and just pay attention to what's presented to you? And I think that's where I get stuck. Like, as a juror, like in here, and I will never get picked, right? So I've never been put in this situation. You were told to basically leave all your junk at the door. You're supposed to go in, you're supposed to listen to what's being told to you and decide based on the facts and the evidence presented. You're not supposed to carry in with you all of your life experiences. That's part of your jury instruction. Johnny Cochran was accused of jury nullification because he went all for everything outside of that. Everything was based on your emotion. It wasn't in his closing argument. Send a message. You're the messenger. Like, deliver a message to the white police officers. Like, that's not what you're supposed to do as a jury. So the jury abandoned their basic instruction, which is base it on the facts and the evidence. When you have 10 months of evidence and it takes you 3.5 hours to come to your decision, at some point you stopped listening. At some point you stopped hearing the evidence and the facts for what they were, and you went with your gut about something. At some point it's impossible not to, and the jurors talk about that. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I personally feel that regardless of what happens in other cases or what our temperature was in LA at that time, that's not what happened here. There was no evidence to prove or to insinuate that there was any planting of evidence. There just wasn't. They just floated all that crap out there, and people bought it, and the 12 jurors bought it.
But, and we could talk about race every day, all day. But what part of this it's about celebrity, too. Like, the fact is that, yes, he is a black man, but he's this, famous, playful and gregarious superstar, who was in funny movies and great commercials, and and so people gave him this, like, it didn't matter. Take what's his name, the one who killed his wife.
Which one?
I was going to say Scott Peterson.
The 70s actor there, Robert Blake.
Oh,
he's kind of creepy. So he didn't have like all this support, and he wasn't a legend. I mean, he was kind of a creepy actor, so, but you take somebody like OJ Simpson, and I think that you had support, maybe especially, and Jarrett, you could speak, maybe especially by the black community, because he was a great representation of how far you can go and who you can be and how you can live.
So here's the other thing, though, too. Like, the two actors that are in the show, Cuba Gooding, who plays him, and Courtney B. Vance, who plays Johnny Cochran, both have come out and said, I cheered the day he was freed, because that says a lot for Black people in our country. And I'm bothered by that, because what does that say about our justice system? And what does it say about the system that we are all raised to believe in? Now, I understand that there are people that destroy it, that destroy our confidence in it, but
see, I think that's it right there. Is like, you're raised to believe in it, but I'm not. I don't.
You are raised to. We're all raised to believe in it, but our personal experiences then cloud what our beliefs are. We're all taught that the system is here to protect us. I mean,
I'm not. Like, when I was a young boy, watching my dad get pulled over, like, the conversation we have is not about trust in the justice system. The conversation is the system is stacked against you.
Right, but based on your experiences, though. I'm saying that until it happens to you, you don't know to discredit it, is what I'm saying.
Not just based on our experience, but, like, on the evidence that supports that shows, like, Black people being arrested more times than not when the same crimes happen or the same, instances happen. There's so much evidence to support, like, the system is stacked against you.
Right, I'm saying, right.
Well, but it doesn't have to be a personal experience.
Right.
I get what you're saying.
Sure,
like, if I had a son who was Black, I would teach him that, unfortunately, there are people who automatically will find you guilty. You have to, make sure that you're respectful. Make sure that you're, yes, sir, and that you do, because as much as you don't want to believe that this is the case, you have to prepare your kids to be protected.
I had this conversation once, and I was accused of being a racist for hours. So I feel like that conversation needs to happen with everybody. That if you are to be respectful, don't commit crimes to begin with. But if you get caught doing something or you get pulled over, just respect the process. I mean, there's lots of videos that don't get shown of people that don't run, that don't argue, that don't. I mean, there was a guy that was shot in my neighborhood because he got out, he lunged at the police, he was screaming at all the officer did is get out of the car, and he came at him with a knife, and they shot him. Mm-hmm. Like, don't come at a police officer with a weapon. Like,
I wholeheartedly agree with you there. And, like, my parents have taught me, if you ever deal with the police, it's not like be militant or anything like that. But it's definitely be respectful, respect the process, and do what you're told. Ask to reach into the glove compartment or let them know, like, hey, I'm going to reach over here. I'm not reaching for anything other than my insurance.
Right.
So I completely agree with you there. I think that it's hard to remove, because when you talk about, like, looking at it, and I know we're getting close to the end here. I know that you talk about wanting to remove emotion and all those other things and just look at the facts. But I think if we just look at the facts in Chicago, for instance, with the boy who was shot, the young man who was shot by the police officer who said that he was running at it. The evidence that they presented us was he ran at us, I shot him, he shot him multiple times, blah, blah, blah. If we took all that evidence to court, that man would be let free. But then a year and a half later, a video comes out and it's like, no, he wasn't even near you. And you shot him on the ground.
The point is, if you take the evidence to court, then all of that gets presented.
Well,
and then it wouldn't have been.
But in this case with OJ, like, there wouldn't have been camera phone video or, like, dash cam. Like, there's not video to support it that would show something else.
No, there was just hundreds of pieces of evidence.
Well, right. No. And I mean, I think OJ did it too. But, like, I mean, I think it's hard to be that jury and to say, like, remove your emotion or remove the context and remove what we know about this department. If we're just talking about the LAPD at that time. It's hard to remove that from the conversation or the thought process about, like, the evidence.
Yeah,
right, but that wasn't part of the evidence. Our emotions are there, that's for sure. But when you get into that courtroom and evidence is presented, mm-hmm. that's what you're supposed to go with. Like, you may think, oh, I don't know. In the past, the police have done this. Okay, but that's not here. That's not in front of you. That's not what's presented.
That's fair.
And unfortunately, we're human.
Right.
And so, and you're taking anybody and everybody off the street to be jurors. I mean, that's part of our system.
Right.
So we can't necessarily expect, we go from educated people to uneducated people to, we run the gamut when it comes to juries. So you cannot pick and choose people who and know that they will actually leave that at the door.
But let me just go back and say this, because
we've got less than a minute left.
I know, but this is where I always get myself in trouble. I absolutely can, like I said in the beginning of this, my emotions are enmeshed in all of this. I absolutely understand that. And so what I feel here may not apply in another case, because this is wrapped up and this is the person that stabbed my brother to death.
Sure.
And I don't honestly, this is going to sound horrible. I don't care what happened before. I'm only thinking about what happened in this room on this night, on this day. And there is one person that got away with killing my brother. And the defense team did a fantastic job of using past situations to get their guilty client off. If he wasn't guilty, then they didn't have to go to such extremes to be able to get him to walk free. And I struggle with that just morally.
Well, we got to wrap it up. This has been a very excellent conversation.
Yes,
I know.
Yes,
well,
we do.
Speaking of wine, we will soon have our little broadcast after the show, YouTube show coming up, but you're going to have to tune in. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Broadscast Show and Instagram. And thanks, Jarrett Hill, for joining us. And we will see you guys next time.
You're listening to Broadscast with Kim Goldman and Jackie McDougall. Two broads with faces made for radio.